Each day, distressed eBay buyers add their voices to hundreds of complaints against a single trader.
And I'm just looking at a screen full of it here. Did not receive item, have not received item, worst eBayer ever, don't buy from this fraudster. We've got rogue sellers on there who ought not be on there, and eBay are just not doing enough to keep those sorts of sellers out.
eBay takes online fraud extremely seriously. We've got over 2,000 trust and safety personnel. They're employees who work around the clock 24/7 trying to minimise any issue.
Former BP executive Robert Vandermeer has bought and sold for years on eBay without a problem. But when a broken arm forced him inside to convalesce, his browsing led to the discovery that many others weren't so lucky. What he's seeing here is the wreckage left by a New South Wales-based iPod seller, Daily Depot Deals, who has failed to deliver hundreds of iPods and is not responding to buyers' complaints.
Looks very much to me to be fraud.
Of even more concern to Vandermeer is eBay's silence.
eBay has gone to ground. They're not saying anything. So we have 200 victims and counting, totally in the dark. They really don't know where they stand, where to go.
It's very easy from people who are looking at these things from outside without the full information, which unfortunately I'm not at liberty to go into because we do have a privacy agreement in place with all of our members, but I can assure you we address these matters extremely proactively.
While eBay maintains it's doing everything it can to prevent criminals operating on its site, police have no doubt online fraud is a growth industry.
Online fraud is a massive problem. It's very pervasive. It's out there. It's global.
Brian Crooks is a victim of what may turn out to be the largest fraud committed on eBay in Australia. He lost more than $3,000.
I was really looking for a quad for Brad's birthday because he really, really wanted one. And we browsed through the internet and we found one that fitted the bill exactly.
Brisbane-based eBusiness Supplies, or EBS, was eBay's 7th largest seller in Australia. To pay for the bike, Brian Crooks used eBay's online payment system PayPal, believing it protected him against fraud.
PayPal is the only payment method that offers up to $20,000 in buyer protection.
But 6 weeks later, despite emailed assurances from EBS, there was still no bike.
Another one telling you they're going to close it. The second delivery date on the 10th of July, when it didn't turn up, that's when the alarm bell started to ring for me.
EBS was only days from liquidation. Its owner had reportedly fled to China, leaving behind around 2,000 buyers waiting in vain for purchases worth more than $1 million. But was it fraud?
We're not experts in financial audits. We're not experts in going through companies' records. It's perfectly normal that liquidators would go in, they would wind up the assets of the company, they would look at the books, the balance sheets. If they find a problem, they then refer it to us, and that is normal business.
Although PayPal set up a special compensation fund promising refunds for all, Brian Crooks says months of frustrating correspondence with eBay and PayPal has left him feeling ripped off again.
When you speak to them by the phone, you're told that it'll be referred to another department, and then they keep asking you for details which you've already sent, and then they keep asking you to file a dispute which you've already filed, and then arbitrarily they just sent me an email to say your dispute is now closed.
My understanding is that the vast majority of buyers were paid by PayPal, and that if buyers still haven't been paid, then they can still contact PayPal.
So does PayPal guarantee buyer protection? The head of the ACCC has already warned eBay and its subsidiary PayPal that he's watching how they promote their buyer protection policy.
If those terms and conditions are, for example, set out in small print, which people don't read or can't understand, then there's a prospect of consumers being confused to the point of being misled or deceived.
In the EBS wash-up, it emerged that eBay was in fact its largest creditor. owed a massive $184,000 in listing fees. The $184,000 from EBS would have rung a few alarm bells.
So we acted very, very promptly on this, and we followed our due process, which I've outlined earlier, and I think the amount we're owed really speaks more to the volume of listings that the seller had rather than the time frame.
I'll be back.
But Robert Vandermeer argues eBay must have known EBS was in financial trouble for months, while continuing to extend credit to the ailing company.
EBS is their 7th largest seller, and with sales of $2, $3, $4 million a year perhaps, then eBay profits quite well from the commissions on those sales. So it's in their interest to prop up a seller and keep them selling, both from a reputation perspective but from a purely financial perspective.
Whether the EBS debacle is ultimately revealed as fraud or not, the scandal has led to calls for tougher regulation of the online marketplace.
I don't think there's any a real motivation for eBay to stop fraud. They still benefit from fraudulent sellers because they still collect the fees.
Elizabeth Beale oversaw a report into the rights of online consumers. Almost half of the eBay users she surveyed had experienced a bad purchase, with most buyers unable to find the seller or get a response from eBay.
eBay has an obligation to provide a safe system and operate in a way that prevents negligence if they are benefiting from these transactions taking place. So in our view, there are legal obligations on eBay that have not been fully tested.
And what about that iPod seller Robert Vandermeer has been tracking? The same seller traded on eBay before. Different name, but same story. In the 60 days before he was deregistered in 2007, the complaints flooded in.
This person hasn't changed their ways, and eBay has allowed them to re-establish and repeat the exercise.
Within minutes of getting that skimmed data, they can be cleaning out those accounts.
According to police, most online fraudsters are repeat offenders.
If eBay made it more difficult for persons to sell goods online without providing proper verification of who they were, then it would be less likely that rogues would enter the space.
Why don't you conduct something like a 100-point ID check?
Well, once again, in this day and age when people can create all sorts of identities, that's not going to help. It's the activity that people do online that is the best indication.
Watch this online space. If the US experiences anything to go by, online fraud will grow as e-commerce expands. Brian Crooks bought a second quad bike for his beloved grandson. This time round, he paid on pickup.